formed this business, I began to receive visions, and I saw exactly what he was speaking to me about. I've actually gone in and I've taught the active shooter training program to the largest black charter school in the Third Ward area, as well as Houston as a whole. I've taught in churches in the area as well. And I'm a firm believer, Sandra, that, as we have heard it preached before, it takes a village to raise a child.
Absolutely.
Well, it takes a village to put this active shooter crisis as well as this gun violence situation on its heels.
You are now watching the Vision Channel, where Habakkuk 2:2 says, "Write the vision and make it plain, so they that see it can take it and run with it." This is the channel where faith and vision collide to bring forth a manifestation. You're watching the Vision Channel.
The Bible teaches us that we are to resist the devil and he is to flee.
My God.
And so when we look at it from that standpoint, I have some instructions and some teachings from the Holy Spirit to be able to go into the churches and to be able to teach the churches how to create a worship-friendly environment that doesn't look like martial law. It doesn't look like you have police officers with guns set up in different locations guarding the perimeter. We can go in and teach you how to set up your parking lot, how to receive your congregants and your guests. We can teach the armor bearers how to do takedown maneuvers if ever necessary in protecting the pastor. We can teach the staff member certain techniques to be able to take down an active shooter in a situation that one were to come into the building.
Okay, what made you want to go into this business?
It all started with the Parkland shooting. It really did. And then I saw so many other opportunities for this because, as I told you, it takes a village. Yes. So it doesn't stop in our worship centers. We have so many areas of crisis situations that have come up that have always been there, but they've only gotten worse. With COVID, domestic violence was on the uprise, and it's still bad. And so I have piggybacked the active shooter training program with also the women's empowerment movement, because one thing I teach women, I don't teach women self-defense. I teach women personal protection. And there is a huge difference. I can go to different locations and facilities where groups of women are together and teach personal protection to put women on an active playing field with men, so that with touch techniques and seizing points and certain soft tissue attacks, a woman can easily incapacitate any man twice her size. We have another crisis on the college campuses where young ladies, 1 out of every 5 are going to experience a sexual assault. So before you send your daughter off to college, you can send her to my program. So when an individual, and I'm not going to name a name, I want to say Johnny or whatever, but I don't want to be offensive, says yes, and the young lady has said no, and he pushes her his agenda, she can push hers by pushing certain seizing points and stop him instantly from any type of aggression that he may be doing towards her.
So that's the difference in the two with the women that you're explaining to us right now. So what I want you all, if you're women, ladies, young ladies, if you are listening and you would like to ask Mr. Manning some questions, you can call this number 281-888-4042. Again, that number is 281-888-4042, and he will be glad to answer your questions. So the other thing I wanted to bring out, Sean, it's like the wild, wild west out there. Since the gun laws have been opened up with no restrictions, anybody can carry a gun. Anybody can get a gun. I don't care where you are, what kind of event you're at. You almost feel vulnerable to some kind of shooting or violence.
Yes.
With the House Bill 1240, HR 1808, the new gun bill, my God, includes money for school safety, mental health, state crisis intervention programs and incentives for states to include juvenile records for criminal background checks for ages 18 through 21. Who wanted to buy a gun? I mean, you can get your hands on it. It don't matter your age, whether they pass the law or not. They still gonna get their hands on a gun
Absolutely.
because it's gonna be somebody that they can go purchase it from.
That's true. And, it's sad, but at the age of 18, you can literally go into any gun store and buy 3-4 assault rifles in one day. And if you don't purchase them there, you can purchase them on the streets. That is true. Our society is just inundated, saturated, oversaturated with handguns, long guns, guns of all kinds. And the problem is in the home, they're not well secured. So if you have a child 14, 15, or even in the case where we saw, I believe, an 8-year-old child obtained a weapon from a parent and brought it to school and shot the teacher, center mass. So, we have a situation now with guns and, they say they want to put it all off on mental illness, but the thing is, and there is a mental illness crisis, and I'm not trying to avoid or ignore that, but we need to do better in safeguarding guns. We need to be able to have some sort of locks. You just can't put your gun under your pillow anymore. You can't put it under your mattress or in your night table because kids are searching out for where you're hiding things. Yes.
I wanted to say that the law that the age 18 through 21,
Yes.
it will only apply to the AR-15 rifle. It doesn't apply to all guns.
That's true. But, the situation here is when I look back as a military veteran, you look at one of the worst active shooting scenarios that took place. It took place in Killeen, Texas, and it took place at a Luby's cafeteria, and it wasn't an AR-15 involved. It was a Ruger 89, if I'm not mistaken. It was a handgun.
My God.
And it was a handgun that 22 people died to. So it is a gun crisis. We have a situation of gun violence that has taken over our culture and our society. Yes, the AR-15 is a military-style weapon, and in most situations, it has no business in the hands of certain people. It really doesn't. Now, if you're out on the farm and you just want to do some plinking, that's understood. But in an urban or in the city, in that sort of setting, and with children, it has no place. It really doesn't.
Okay, Sean, where you come in at trying to do this, where does your program come in at? It almost seemed like everybody needs to carry a gun.
I want to disagree with that wholeheartedly. And one place I want to start my disagreement, and I know a lot of people are going to disagree with me, but that's in the church. We have too many people, whether deacons or whether greeters or ushers, that are carrying guns. And the problem with that is that if we have an active shooter situation in the church, most of these people haven't gone to the gun range in 6 months, a year, 2 years, 5 years. And you're shooting at paper targets there. But in an active crisis, your target is moving. And I would hate to say, with 7 to 10 people in the church carrying handguns, that some of them may show up on a ballistic report as having shot and killed members in the church. That's one thing. And then in society, you just never know. I mean, you know, you go in a movie theater and you're probably sitting right next to someone that's armed, strapped, loaded, and ready for combat.
That's true. That's true. You
So,
just never know.
You really don't.
You never know.
You really don't.
So have you set up your program in any schools?
I have. I had a charter school by the name of Beatrice Mays Institute. It's the largest black charter school. Right, yes. They brought me in, and they were so excited about the training because it gave them a different look from what's being taught. And I'm not going to name the name of the other program that's being taught. There's a number of programs that are being taught, and they're very similar, and they're fear-based programs. Now, this gave them a look at a program that wasn't fear-based, but that was very active in putting the shooter down in 59 seconds.
My God.
And that's what we want to accomplish because, as you've seen, the anniversary of Uvalde is coming up
Yes,
tomorrow.
tomorrow,
And
yes,
what happened
tomorrow,
there? We had
tomorrow.
a response time of
Yes.
over an hour.
Yes.
At Parkland, we had a first responder with a handgun that never walked in the building. And so our response times can range anywhere from 4 to 6 minutes to an hour and 10 minutes. But with the active shooter training program that we implement, we teach people how to pair off. If you're on the flight team, then you secure the perimeter, and those that are behind the, we say, enemy line or behind the active shooter, you help those that are weak, those that are elderly, those that are fearful, those that are just traumatized and can't move. You help them to safety. Now, the fight team is activated, and they're taking down the active shooter with hand signs and tactical movements to be able to take down the shooter in 59 seconds. And what we have seen is that when the active shooter is confronted, there are less casualties. And we've seen that in a number of cases. We had an incident in a sushi bar in Houston, and the guy was getting ready to get tuned up. He shot into the ceiling, and before he could continue his rampage, 2 people took him to the ground and avoided any further crisis. And it's happening that way in churches, it's happening that way in schools. And what we want to be able to do is empower people with tools to be able to do those same things and to avoid this, because we're seeing now that this active shooting situation is not going anywhere. It has intensified. We're seeing them now at least once a week, and we need to prepare our schools, our churches. We need to prepare even our families, because they could be on the metro bus. They could be in a movie theater, at a restaurant. They could be anywhere, and they can actually intervene and be the one to take down that shooter and stop the death of 15, 20 people. And that's what we want to be able to do.
Well, you know, since it was open to everybody that could carry a gun, you no longer need a gun license, then it made it where everybody could carry.
That's right.
So it was no concern then for a gun license or even going to the gun range
That's
at
true.
this time. So that's why everybody's carrying at this time.
And everybody's not mentally competent to be able to carry.
That's true.
And that further complicates this situation and the crisis, you know, because the minute you get offended, the minute somebody, rejects you in a way that you are angered, now you have a sense of superiority because you have a weapon
Right,
on your person.
right.
So it's a bad It's a bad chemistry.
It
it's
is.
it's a bad.
I totally agree with you. It sounds like your program is costly. Is it affordable?
It is affordable, and it's even more affordable when we get a number of different organizations coming together. For instance, if the church has a program where a number of churches come together to meet, that's why I said it takes a village to put this situation on its heels.
Absolutely.
If a number of churches will commit, then it brings that price down dramatically. Now, let me also introduce another area, and that is, as I told you, I don't teach self-defense when I'm talking about women in the community. I teach self-defense to kids. What is the difference then? Okay, well, self-defense, if you come into my building or I go out to your building and I teach self-defense, I'm teaching very basic techniques. I'm putting a white belt on you. You're paying a tuition. You're learning very basic techniques, and eventually you'll graduate. You're going to learn the discipline. You're going to learn the tradition. You're going to learn techniques. But when you're an adult and you're on these streets on a daily basis, as bad as the crime is, if you are accosted, if somebody comes at you, you cannot jump in a DeLorean and go back to the future 25 years later when I would teach you an advanced technique, then bring that back into your present day situation and apply it at that very moment. So what I'm doing, and it's very provocative, it's very controversial, but I turn the martial arts system upside down. And I also bring in my military experience. So instead of teaching a young lady a very basic technique, which is punch, punch, kick, kick, and you're punching a man twice your size, I am not setting you up for failure. I am not going to put you in a situation to where you punch that man in his face, he bows up and reaches in his belt line, pulls out his gun, and blows your brains out. I'm going to teach you techniques where you go straight into his eyes, you go into his throat.
Wow.
You're now using seizing points. I could show you one right now where I touch you and take you all the way to the ground.
My God.
And these are the kind of techniques that they actually come when you reach the level of a master, but most people don't have that kind of time to dedicate. I've been in martial arts for 40 years.
Oh, wow.
And it took me 20 years to get into some of these techniques that I share on the first day. That's why it's considered personal protection. It's not self-defense. And those are the differences. But now what I also like to implement is, since we're dealing with armor bearers in the church, we're also working with ushers and greeters and certain staff members. We also teach them suspect recognition. We teach them environmental awareness. We teach them how to set up a stratus around what would potentially be an active shooter in the church without alerting anyone else in that environment. We're using hand signs, we're using our radios, we're not allowing backpacks into church, and we're monitoring that situation very closely. Then we teach women's empowerment. Then there is a third prong to that, and that is we want to catch them early. And so we teach children self-defense. When I go in my community, sometimes it saddens me because the responses I get is, yeah, huh, what, huh? You know, I get that, and it's like a belligerence in the babies.
Yes.
And so what I'd like to do is be able to expose them to something different and a discipline where, sir, yes, sir, is the proper response. They snap to attention, and then they learn techniques, and then they watch themselves grow, and their confidence grows, and now they can see who they are, And a child that learns self-defense at an early age is 10 times less likely to pick up a handgun later. So when we can reach them early,
That's right.
we can change the trajectory, or the course of their lives by bringing in discipline that they wouldn't otherwise receive. And then we work also with women, and we work with the churches and the community, and that is a village turning this whole culture of violence on its head and telling it it's time for you to leave. That's what we want to do.
So if anyone wanted to get in contact with you, because we have educators listening, we have people
Yes.
with businesses that's listening, we have pastors that's listening in on you, how can they contact you? Give them your number. Or if you have an email address, I would advise you to give them both so that they can get in contact with you.
Yes. What I want to say as I'm about to give you both of those modes or methods of communication is somebody out there is listening that as God tugged on me on February the 14th of 2018, when the active shooting scenario happened at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School, and I was activated to come into this ministry of helps. Someone or a number of people out there have the ability to sow into this ministry. There are people out there right now that are interested in co-venturing with me. There are people out there that are interested in partnering with me. There are churches out there that are interested in using my services, and women's groups and organizations that want to pull together to receive these services. My number is 281-571-5759. My email address is B as in Bravo, T as in Tango, A as in Alpha, Houston@gmail.com. Now let me say one more thing, and that is that how can you enter into the strong man's house and spoil his goods lest you bind him first? Now, we're dealing with spiritual warfare in all of these situations that we're talking about. And the enemy loves for us to talk about it and talk
Yes.
about it and
Yes,
talk about it
yes,
and talk
yes.
about it. And his house stays intact because nobody wants to put the talk into action. But when we come together, because one may be easily overtaken, two can withstand him, but a threefold cord is not easily broken. So when we come together in unity and we put this thing together, we get the pricing, you call me out, and we come together so we can come into agreement on this. Now we can bind the strong man and we can put him to flight. We certainly can. We're not supposed to be fleeing from him. He's supposed to be fleeing from us.
Amen.
Amen.
Amen. So if you have any questions for Mr. Manning and you would like to get connected with his business, he just gave you his phone number, his email. Get connected with him. It's an excellent program to get into. And also, do you teach gun violence?
Yes. That's Mount Vernon.
What's your question?
Programs doing I believe it's needed in every school, every church, and the strongest of it is amazing
We're taking a question.
to offer. I think every business should have this kind of training. You don't want to take a chance. So, I didn't hear, and maybe I did hear him say the cost. That's what I was calling. That was my question.
Yes. The cost, what? Yes.
We had a caller, and Mr. Manning will answer this question from the caller. Thank you, caller, so much for calling in.
Yes. When it comes to cost, what we want to do is we want to come out to your location. We want to be able to see the fire marshal diagram on your building. We take everything into consideration when we're actually putting together a cost, because we want to be able to prepare your people for the exits. We want to be able to prepare your people for a number of different things. We want to know how many people are going to go through your training. So there are a number of variables that are considered before we actually give a price. Now, I want to say this to you, and that is, the more churches that come into agreement at the same time, the less the fees would actually be. And for instance, if we had a women's organization that said, I have 50 women right now that I want to come into your program, the fee then quite naturally would be much less than if I had one woman caller that called me and said, can you teach me your program? Well, that is a personal training lesson, and that would be much more costly than if I had 50 people. So from the standpoint of what the caller is asking, it depends. When we're talking about active shooter training program, it depends on a number of factors before we can actually give a quote. And then when we talk about the different programs such as personal protection for women, and that also includes men, and that program is also for seniors, because we teach cane techniques, and we teach them how to turn that cane into a lethal weapon to disarm knives and guns. We teach them how to use their fingers to bring down assailants that are twice their size and twice as strong. And then we have programs for kids. Now, when we talk about these programs and you ask for a price, that too is considered, something that we need to talk further about and find out the number of people that are going to be involved. Now, we can actually come to your location. So if you have an activity center, a multipurpose center, or something of that nature, we can actually come to your location and do the instruction. But there's a lot of considerations before I can just simply give a quote or a price over the phone. I need to see what we're dealing with. Thank you.
I want to ask you a question. Do you teach gun training?
No, Sandra, I do not. Now, I'm a military veteran, and every firearm they put in front of me, I qualified expert with. But that is not in my, not in the programs that we offer. I'm not real strong on everybody having guns. I just think that there are other people out there that may be their bread and butter, if you will, or their expertise, I should say. And that's what they do, and they do that exclusively.
Okay, so if a church called you, what kind of training would you bring on their campus?
Okay. If a church were to give me a call, I could bring the entire program, all of the programs. You have the active shooter training program. Then you have programs where I believe a number of churches have relied on armor bearers according to their size. If you look at some churches, you might have an armor bearer. He's 6'4" and he's 400 pounds. But if he juke one way, he'll blow out a kneecap, because you can't put that kind of weight on knees, ankles, and joints. So what we do is we teach, we condition, we train, we work with them in those touch techniques and soft tissue techniques where you can get somebody to come in compliance by touching them. Wow. And we teach that to the armor bearers. So now we have active shooter training program. We have training for the security and the armor bearers. Then if the church wants to be able to be a blessing to the community and allow their activity community centers to be used, we can bring in the women's empowerment training, which also we would have separate classes for men so there aren't any distractions in the classroom. Okay. Then we would also bring in the elderly population to train them, and then we could also have children's classes, which would be self-defense. Mm-hmm. So that depends solely on what the church would be willing to entertain as far as the programs we offer.
So, Sean, I really believe in your program. It's a no-brainer. Every church needs it. Every school needs it. Every business needs it. I'm telling you, we so need this program.
Yes. I want to say this to you. Everything that you go through in life is leading you to something. It really is. All things are working together for the good. You know, when I got out of the military and, you know, times were kind of tough, we were in a recession. I took a job as a security guard, and I didn't have a commission, which meant I couldn't carry a weapon at that time. And an active shooting scenario came into Northwest Memorial Hospital on 610 East, and I was called on the radio with a flashlight. And I had to disarm that shooter who had a long gun. He had an assault rifle. And so when the day of Marjorie Stoneman Douglas happened and God said, it's time, I knew because I had already been there before. I'd already seen that before. I'd already trained for that in the military. And then with the martial art experience, I knew that that calling was for me. And it was such a strong pull on my life that I immediately set up a LLC and began, training. And so that's what we want to do, and that's what we want to do now. And we want to be able to take it to a whole different level because, as you can see me, I'm one person. But when people sow into this ministry, what we want to do is I want to be able to replicate myself because I can't be everywhere at one time. Right. But when I train 10 people, now I can be at your church while I have 2 people at a battered women's shelter and I have 2 other people at a different location. And now after replicating myself, now we can start to make a dent in this, not just in one end of town from the sunny side. We can be on the northwest side, the northeast side, the southeast side, and the southwest side all at the same time. And so that's what we want to accomplish. And we want to be able to not be in a storefront location where people have to come from Pearland, let's say. They have to come from Pearland to 249 in Fallbrook. We want to be able to come to your location. And that's why it's so important that at your location, you pull as many people into this as possible, then call me, and then I can give you a quote when you can tell me, yes, okay, now I have 25, I have 50 people, okay, what is that going to look like? And then once I look at your location, I can say, this is what it looks like. And then we can talk about it, and we can come to an agreement where you feel most comfortable. Yes.
So if a school had you to come out, how would you set up your program for the school? And I'm asking this because I saw on the news a couple of months ago the school district.
Yes.
It's an almost school district. They were in talks of their teacher, and being an educator myself, wearing shields to school for the next school year.
My. I mean, this would be the ideal time during the summer to be able to bring teachers in. I've actually seen active shooter training taught where children have been traumatized. They've actually come in and been shooting off blanks in the building. And, you know, these kids are already under so much stress. You know, they're dealing with bullying. They're dealing with cyber bullying. They've seen the news. They know what an active shooting scenario is. And now you're going to introduce blanks into the building with the sound sounding like live fire, and now you're adding PTSD to children, you know, that otherwise wouldn't have it. I've seen all kinds of different tactics and ways of teaching this active shooter training program that are so far-fetched and out of line. What I would do, as I did at Beatrice Mays Institute, is I would come in, I would have a session with the teachers first. The teachers would learn how to, first of all, use sign language to be able to identify who you are. Are you flight team or are you fight team? So then flight team is given an assignment to now lock the doors, secure all areas behind the fight team. Now the fight team is using hand signs to be able to communicate and advance on the shooter. So at that point, each of them is skilled in taking a handgun away, taking a long rifle or a long gun away. They're trained in how to take a knife away from the active shooter. Then once they've done so, they learn how to twist tie the active shooter. They learn how now to take the weapon and secure it and put it somewhere, because the last thing you want to do is come out of this crisis having disarmed the active shooter and run out of the building holding on to the very weapon that the active shooter had. It would be a very bad day for that individual. So what we do is we teach them how to present themselves to the first responders. Friendly, down and up. And then we have people reporting what actually transpired in the building, how many casualties we have, that the active shooter is down, that there was only one, he's twist-tied, the weapon is secured here, and this is what's going on in this crime scene. That's what we address, and that's what we teach. But we teach teachers how to take down the active shooter in 59 seconds. Well, you know, I did this at a town hall meeting some years ago, and you know, I talked about this, and I'm not going to mention the church. I'm not going to do that. But I had one of the youth pastors to stand up and say, "It don't take all that."
Oh, wow.
Well, excuse me, but now you can see it takes all that.
Yes, Lord.
Yeah, because anytime you have a first responding crew of 3-4 different police officers that are departments, and they're outside putting hand sanitizer on their hands, they're communicating on the radio, and guns are still going off in the building, and there's no response an hour and 5 minutes later. It takes all that.
Yes, it does.
Whenever you have a police officer sitting on his Cushman with a weapon on his side, and he still refuses to enter the building, it takes all that.
Yes.
When you have children dying as children are dying, and teachers actually having to shield the children with their own bodies so the children aren't killed and they martyr themselves, it takes all that. But now to answer your question about shields, I really don't see the need for shields. I think ultimately what we're going to do, because we are in such a reactionary mode and we're based in everything concerning fear, we're ultimately going to set up schools that look more like penitentiaries for our children.
Wow.
we're ultimately going to do that. Windows are going to be replaced. We had an active shooting scenario that we saw on TV where the door was locked, but the active shooter shot the windows out and crawled up underneath the locking mechanism on the door, came in and shot up a whole bunch. So now the doors are going to be replaced, and before long, you're going to have bulletproof metal doors at the front of the building. Windows are going to be blocked off, and children are going to be containerized for learning. And if you think that's a healthy atmosphere, I don't know what to say. But to put on shields and protective gear and look almost robotic in the process, that's kind of science fiction. For me, it really is. That's science fiction.
Yes, in one school they were talking about the teachers getting trained to carry weapons. Now, the school that I teach at, we have to keep our doors locked
Yes.
at all times. I don't
Yes.
care at all times. About this happened probably about 3 weeks ago, because the school I work at is across the street from some apartments.
Yes.
And they thought that they heard a gunshot at those apartments. So we were all on lockdown. The kids couldn't go outside or anything. But this program that you're offering, I think it's an excellent program to incorporate in the schools. It is really needed in the schools. In the event something happened, we know how to handle ourselves.
Absolutely.
Overall, carrying a gun.
I think the gun should be the very, very last resort, because when you are trained to use a weapon, you're trained to shoot at paper targets. There is a huge difference when you're staring at an individual with a loaded weapon firing back at you, and you have hundreds of screaming kids running to try to find their classroom, and some of them are running right in the path of the active shooter and maybe running in between the two of you. It's a big difference. You can't prepare for combat shooting at paper targets. And the last thing you would want to end your education, your career in education with, is the fact that it was your bullet that took out the 9-year-old and not that of the active shooter.
Yes.
And that could very easily happen when everybody's got handguns and very few people are trained properly. And I say properly with moving targets and in scenarios, because when you look at a lot of your special forces training in the military, you have scenarios where you have to enter into a room. The police department uses the same type of training, where you have to enter into a room and immediately determine right away if that's friendly or if that's an enemy, and you have to fire on it right away. That type of training is not available. That type of training is not going to be offered to all teachers. We're talking about going to a gun range and shooting at a paper target that's no more than a silhouette of what the active shooter may look like, and I don't see that as being successful. No. Yes.
Yeah, it's just so much. And when you brought up about the policemen, because when you think about it, policemen, when they come in contact with a victim, are they in danger? Or do they really fear that they're in danger and they shoot the suspect?
Yes.
And then a lot of times they're not in danger like they pretend they were.
Yes.
So
Yes.
they don't use a program like you have, which you could go into the police department and talk to them about getting your training involved. I think this also would offset a lot of the killing that the policemen are doing with innocent people.
Now, Sandra, you went into a whole different
I know, I
area
just had
there,
to ask the
and you
question
know,
because I'm thinking
hey,
about your
well,
training.
I'm telling you, this is something. Instead of defunding the police, reform them
Yes,
and give
absolutely,
them what they
absolutely.
need, because anytime you see where the Harris County Jail people are dying,
Yes.
one a week or one a month,
Yes.
there's abuse going on.
Yes.
And when you see some of these videos with these body cams of these police officers,
Yes.
and it's taken 10 police officers to take down one individual,
Yes.
that's senseless.
Yes, it
This
is.
training teaches you one individual on one person, securing that person completely. And, that in itself is something the police officers need as far as training. So, yes, absolutely. This would be something that would be great for police reform.
Yes.
So, I mean, there's so many different applications. It's not like I'm coming to you as a martial arts instructor,
Right.
and I want you to come into my dojo for training. No, I have a lot of different training programs, and they're not all martial art related. As a matter of fact, the martial arts, we give those to the kids,
All
and we
right.
move on
That's
with
good.
advanced
That's good.
techniques that adult individuals will need in a situation like we're dealing with today. The seniors, they can't go to the ATM machine without
Right.
juggers following them home and beating them near to death.
Absolutely.
But in their hand is the cane they need to
Yes.
be able to ward off that attack. And if you saw how I move a cane,
Yes.
you'd realize that a cane is more deadly than having a samurai sword in your hand, and certainly capable of batting down knives and guns and incapacitating any suspect or assailant. So there's so many applications. There's so much to do. There's so much work, and I welcome all of it. Please call me and set up these different times for me to come out, because I'm ready to work. I'm willing to work. It's my call purpose to do what I'm doing. I'm not just doing something because I have, let's say, a talent. I'm doing it because I was called to do it.
All right.
And the
that's it.
training that I'm giving you is what the Holy Spirit has given me. It is not active shooter doctrinal training. It's God's doctrines.
My God.
And
That's
so
what we need.
that's
Yes.
what we need. That's
Yes.
what we need. We don't need fear. We need God.
That's right. That's right. So this has been so exciting. This has been so much information. Mr. Manning had just came and just given us information, stuff we didn't know. I'm so excited about this program. I'm going to be talking it up. If you're listening out there, talk up this program. So as Mr. Manning give his closing remarks, I want him to give you the name of his business again, his phone number where you can reach out to him. Pastors, are you listening? Schools, teachers, administrators, are you listening? Get his information, incorporate this program in your churches, in your business entrepreneurs. You need this program. So I'm going to have him to give his closing remarks and give you his information again of his business name, his phone number, and his email address again.
It has been a joy to be able to share today. I am committed. This is my passion. This is my purpose. And this is what I want to be able to do. I am an agent of change. I am a peacemaker. And what I want to be able to do is help you to set up your churches in a way that it doesn't look like martial law in your church environment. It looks like a worship-friendly atmosphere, but everyone in there has suspect recognition training. They have a situational awareness training, and they're able to take down any threat in the church, and yet they're right there greeting all of your guests with a smile on their face. Oh, no, sir, I'm sorry. If you don't mind, there's no backpacks allowed in the church, but we can secure that for you, and it's not you. I mean, we're doing that with everyone. So let's go ahead and take that backpack and put it away and lock it up so nobody's going to get in it. It's that kind of a situation where people can worship and not be distracted by the things in the atmosphere that seem to be a threat. We want to be able to empower women to be able to walk in the community without fear of being assaulted. There's a situation where women are being abducted into the human trafficking arena. We want to be able to empower women so that they, and that's another thing we teach is China, which If you're grabbed, you have the ability to come out of that technique while incapacitating the opponent. There's just so much. There really is. And I want to be able to share it. I want to be able to come out to your location. And as that caller asked, how much is it? I want to be able to give you a price that makes sense to you. But I want to be able to come out and do something that's going to be beneficial to everyone in that environment. Give me that opportunity, and I'll give you the very best of my time, my training, my attention. Thank you so much for this opportunity. And once again, before I close, my phone number is 281-571-5759. And my email address is B as in Bravo, T as in Tango, A as in Alpha, Houston @gmail.com. Thank you so much.
Give them your name of your business one last time.
The name of my business is Black Tiger Enterprises, and my name is Sean Manny.
We hope you have enjoyed our show. Let's get this word out. We want to keep people safe than sorrow. Tune in next Tuesday with us. Let's talk with Sandra. Our special guest will be no other than Pastor Timothy Criswell, pastor of 5th Ward Baptist Church, as we close out this month on mental health awareness.